Good evening. I want to talk to you tonight about pubs in Swinton. I expect, like many of you are looking forward to seeing the pubs open again. I know I certainly am. Sadly, some pubs will never open again. They've already gone. Some pubs have changed over the years, so I want to cover how the look of the buildings changed, even the names have changed as we've moved on through time. So we're filming outside of the what was the station pub, the station hotel. This would have been built not long after the railways arrived in Swinton. They arrived in 1840, and if we can just look around over in that direction, we can see the present Swinton interchange and the car park where the interchange car park is now was once a goods yard, and so it would have been quite a busy area. And Swinton train station is now back in its original location, but it would have been an exchange of people from getting off the trains because they would come here for refreshment while waiting connections to Doncaster and beyond, because the railways came much later. But back to our story of pubs. Swinton's first reference to a pub or an inn of any kind is believed to be a medieval inn somewhere in the area of Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill was part of an estate owned by the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem. And linking that, all monasteries had like a brew house. Castles had brew houses. Beer of either strong beer or weak beer, sometimes called small beer, was actually much safer to drink than water, which was often tainted with pollution and the sort of runoff of fields. So beer was a way of almost like a sterile drink. Pubs came in many different shapes and sizes. The first pubs were really quite small institutions. Often they were then like cottage conversions. It may have been a widow, a trade for a widow. She could brew beer and serve beer in a room from her cottage. The larger premises were coaching inns, and often they would have accommodation and stabling along main highways. When we're relying on horse-drawn transport, obviously you had to change the horses every so often, and movement was slow and travellers needed refreshment and rest, and so the coaching inns sprung up. So we had some of them in Swinton as well. In the boom time of pub building, I guess that's the Victorian era, the Victorian and Edwardian pubs, where money was thrown at them by the brewers. They wanted to create grand places, and again we're going to reference some of those as we look at some of the pubs in Swinton. We're not going to cover every single pub or club, but we'll try and have a good look. Originally, beer in Britain was fruit-based, by things like ciders, and they used herbs. Now, when we started brewing with hops, that was the people who had fought in France in the 100 Years' War, the battles of Crécy, Agincourt, Poitiers. The French used hops for brewing, and they liked the taste of that, and so they brought the hops over, and that sort of changed the nature of beer in England. Just got an emergency vehicle passing by, so we'll let him go on his way. So let's take a look first of all. We're going to go right to the top of Swinton, and we're going to go to look at the Woodman Inn. It was then originally called the Woodman's Inn, and at the side here there was actually an outlet for a butcher's shop. So it wasn't just a pub, it was also a butcher's shop. You can see the houses going away to Warrenvale Road. These properties have now gone, but that was the Woodman Inn. It's believed the Woodman Inn was named after a work of art called the Woodman's Return, which was created at the Rockingham Pottery quite close by. If we move down the road, we pass the King's Head. The King's Head is actually the oldest license, the oldest continual license in Swinton. That's not to say it's the oldest pub. As I said, we had a medieval establishment, but the King's Head is the oldest continuous license. Just down from the King's Head, we've got the gate, or the gate in as then was. This is an old picture of the gate. The gate was a cottage conversion, so part of it was be accommodation and part of it was a pub, but certainly being we know the licensees there right back from the middle of the 19th century, most certainly. Moving down the road, we come to the Ring of Bells. Here's an older photograph of the Ring of Bells. You can see the tram lines there, and you know, looking the car parking area is at the front here. That's the Ring of Bells. Now we are going to just take a little tangent away from the main road now. This is a coaching inn. It was a 3-story building, and it was called the Gaping Goose, also known as the Goose with 2 necks at one time. Now this actually stood about 50 yards from the main road on Fitzwilliam Street. It's the one-way section of Fitzwilliam Street, and if you look into the wall there, you can actually see the 2 stanchions which show the gateway, the doorway of the inn. So these properties were owned by a family called Kemp, and so the trace there of the Gaping Goose is still existent on Fitzwilliam Street. One of our lost pubs. We'll come back along Milton Street now, and this is a very old photograph which shows the Travellers' Rest. You can see the Travellers' Rest rising above there. There were cottages in what became later the car park of the Travellers' Rest. So that's the Travellers' Rest car park, and that's like before and now. The Travellers actually was a later building. There was a much smaller pub there, and it was noted that the infamous Sheffield criminal Charlie Peace actually drank in the Travellers' Rest. This is now no longer a pub. It's a private residence now. So we rejoin the main road, and we can look now at what was the Butcher's Arms. Again, a pub that's changed. You can see the junction of Queen Street there. This is how the old Butcher's Arms looked, really opening out onto the main road. It had a central doorway with rooms at either side. Now, in the 1970s, the pub which is now the Butcher's Arms was actually built behind it. So this is the current Butcher's Arms, and so when that was completed, the one at the front was demolished and away it went. So there we have the Butcher's Arms. I've missed out the Robin Hood. I believe the Robin Hood is called after the connection with the King John's butler who lived at Swinton Hall right next to it. So it's a bit of a joke that maybe they called it the Robin Hood after that. I'm going to just mention the Victoria Club now. It's now so it was a club. It's now called the Vic. It's not a club anymore. But this part of the building was actually first built in the 1920s as a roller skating rink. This is a later extension that was put on the front. This very early photo is from 1912, and this shows the royal party driving from Wentworth Woodhouse to Cadeby Colliery after the disaster. And you can see where the children are standing here. So the area of the Victoria, or the Victoria Club, was just a piece of open land at that time. We move down the road now, and we come to what was the Canal Tavern. Again, this has been its name changed many times. The next picture here shows the building as it was later on, rebuilt from a much smaller premises, and now completely disappeared. Just a little bit of a peep there, looking over from the Canal Bridge. You can just see the corner of the Canal Bar. It was also called the Towpath at times. We then have a pub which was called the Red House, and this is a photograph taken in the 1950s. Again, this is no longer a pub now. The building is still there, but it's going to be accommodation. So we still have the building. That's how it looks more or less today, looking at a more of a modern image. And this corner building here on the corner of Whiteley Road, that was also a pub. That was called the Crown. So this little corner pub was also called the Crown. So quite a cluster of pubs in that area. Now, moving further down, we have this was called the Don Hotel. This is now a shop. It's the Lane Emporium. But the typically big Edwardian pub, massive, built on a massive scale with meeting rooms upstairs. I'm going to come back and I'm just to go off to tangent and go towards the High House. An interesting story about the High House. It was built by a gentleman called James Bickerstaff, who bought land at Piccadilly from Edwin Thomas Harrop, 1871, and he built the pub. He built a joiner's shop and stables behind, and he built 16 houses because he obviously wanted some customers for his pub. So that dates from the 1870s. The Creswell Arms itself has an interesting history. It's a rebuilt now, but it serves that area of Bald Road in Swinton. I am going to finish my last pub. Is going to be around the what was the ship pub, the Ship Inn. You can see this white building here. There's the Canal Tavern as was. There's the Red House. Here's the Dern and Duff Canal, and the ship has had a very interesting history. It's no longer there now, but I have here actually a conveyance document dated from 1852, and this conveyance document actually shows when the pub was first purchased by a gentleman called John Newton Mappin of Sheffield. He was a brewer, and he bought the pub between the South Yorkshire Railway Company and the River Dun Company in 1850. Where did I say my date was? And he paid the princely sum of £420. So the ship, we have a site plan here, and it was called the Ship because it looked like the front of a ship, the bow of a ship, and to the rear of the ship was stabling, but that was later built upon and extended as it went on. The licensee at that time, she's named here, was the lady Mrs. Simpson, and she came along with the pub. So Mr. Mappin bought the Ship in 1852 from the canal company who had operated it before. It is also said that the ship was noted to have a ghost inside. So pubs and pubs have not only been used for drinking. We have references to pubs were used for inquests. Certainly the shipping was used for inquests, and the Sports Million on Fitzwilliam Street was also used for inquests. So there we have a very, very brief gallop through the drinking establishments of Swinton, and let's hope that we might meet up sometime soon and share a pint. Thank you very much.